January 8th, 2017, Graceland. The air was sharp with winter, candles flickering against marble. On what would have been Elvis Presley's 82nd birthday, his daughter Lisa Marie stepped on stage holding his old silver microphone. The crowd expected a speech, but when she raised it to her lips, something happened that made the entire garden go silent. Memphis was colder than usual that morning. Frost glazed the wrought-iron gates of Graceland, and mist curled above the eternal flame near Elvis's grave. By 9 a.m., more than 3,000 fans had filled the garden lawn, bundled in scarves and denim jackets, clutching flowers and faded ticket stubs. Every year they came to celebrate his birthday. But this year, something felt different. Inside the mansion, the chandeliers glowed like bottled sunlight. The smell of candle wax, roses, and old vinyl hung in the air. The stage at the garden's edge was small, draped in navy velvet. A single microphone stood at its center, the same Shure 55 Elvis used during his 1972 Madison Square Garden performance. Lisa Marie Presley waited behind the curtain. Her hands were cold, her breathing shallow. It had been years since she'd held a microphone, even longer since she'd sung publicly. Since her mother's passing, she had avoided stages altogether. But this wasn't a concert, it was a promise. She could still hear her father's voice echoing from old reels. Music never dies, honey. It just waits for somebody brave enough to keep it alive. Behind her, Jerry Schilling adjusted his scarf. Lisa, you sure about this? He asked softly. You don't have to sing today. Nobody expects you to, Lisa smiled faintly. That's the point, Jerry. Nobody expects it. Outside, fans began to chant her father's name in rhythmic waves. Elvis! 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 The sound was both worship and mourning. Lisa stepped forward, heels clicking against the wooden planks. She gripped the microphone, the cold metal biting her fingers. She stared down at the brass plate beneath it, engraved. Elvis Presley, live forever. The crowd erupted when she appeared. Camera flashes burst through the fog like white sparks. Reporters leaned over the rail, microphones poised, whispering guesses about what she would say. She leaned toward the mic, lips trembling. The feedback rang sharp and ghostly through the amplifiers, a sound that made several people flinch. It was the same high-pitched hum that used to open her father's concerts. She exhaled slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Happy birthday, Daddy! The words caught in the wind and drifted through the garden. Then she looked up, eyes glassy but steady. You once told me that songs never end. They just wait to be finished. A few fans began to cry. Jerry folded his hands, watching like a father himself. Lisa looked at the sky. You said, if I ever lost my way, I should sing. So here I am. She pressed the mic closer to her lips, paused, and let the silence stretch until it became almost unbearable. You could hear the faint creak of camera shutters, the rustle of jackets, the sound of a single bird overhead. Would you have had the courage to do it? To sing in your father's shadow, surrounded by thousands who came to remember him? Not you? The band behind her shifted nervously. The pianist whispered, You ready, ma'am? Lisa nodded. The first piano note floated out, low, hesitant, like the opening line of a prayer. The crowd hushed instantly. Some reached for their phones, others clasped their hands. Lisa took one last breath, her fingers trembling on the mic stand. And as the melody swelled, she did something she hadn't done in over a decade. She began to sing. The note wavered, fragile, searching, but it was there, real, human. And for a moment, every person in Graceland stopped breathing. The first notes carried softly through the winter air, trembling, unfamiliar, almost afraid. For a heartbeat, the crowd didn't react. They just listened. Lisa's voice was thinner than Elvis's, but it carried a warmth that felt hauntingly familiar. Somewhere between her tone and the melody, you could almost hear his shadow singing with her. The song wasn't one anyone recognized. Not Love Me Tender, not Can't Help Falling in Love. This was different, quieter, rawer. She sang, There's a light in the valley, still waiting for me. People turned to each other, whispering. A woman near the front wiped her eyes. That's not one of his songs, she murmured. Backstage, Jerry Schilling leaned toward Riley Keough, Lisa's daughter. You ever heard that tune before? Riley shook her head. No, but it sounds like him, doesn't it? Jerry frowned. Yeah, it does. A cold wind passed through the garden, rippling the candles. The lights above the stage flickered faintly. Lisa closed her eyes as she sang the next line. You can't see the road when the stars won't shine. The microphone crackled. A faint hiss rolled through the speakers. Old, analog, the kind of sound no modern system should make. The crowd stirred. Someone whispered, "Did you hear that?" Jerry stepped toward the sound tech. "Check the board," he said quickly. The engineer frowned. "Everything's clean. No interference." But the hiss remained, like the static of a forgotten vinyl record playing somewhere behind her voice. Lisa opened her eyes. For a second she looked confused, then calm. "I wrote this after finding something in Dad's tapes," she said softly between verses. "Something unfinished." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She continued, "He said it wasn't ready, but maybe it was just waiting." For me, Jerry's heart skipped. An unfinished tape? He remembered a story Elvis once told backstage in 1977 about a gospel melody he never finished before leaving for tour. Could this be that song? Lisa lifted the mic again. Her hand trembled slightly, but her voice steadied. "When you're lost in the valley, love lights the way." The static grew louder, blending with her tone. It almost sounded like another voice behind hers. Deep, smooth baritone. Some fans clutched each other's arms. One man muttered, "That's him. I swear that's him." The sound technician stared at his monitor, bewildered. "There's a second signal on channel 2, he said. "But we only mic'd her." Jerry's eyes widened. "What do you mean, second signal?" The man swallowed hard. "There's another frequency layered on top of her voice. Male range." "I don't understand how." Riley looked toward her mother, her face pale. "Mom, keep singing," she mouthed. Lisa pressed on, tears shining beneath the lights. "You said love never dies." Then it happened again. The unmistakable warmth of a low harmony beneath her line. Perfectly timed, perfectly in tune. No one breathed. The cameras caught Lisa's face. Not fear, but awe. She could hear it too. "Sometimes," she whispered between lines, "music keeps its promises." The crowd erupted into applause, but the sound was mixed with disbelief. Some screamed, others wept, others just stood frozen, trying to make sense of what they'd heard. Jerry leaned into the mic off stage. "Let's end it here," he said, but Lisa shook her head, still singing. "No, he's not finished yet." And with that, she lifted her voice higher than before, trembling, breaking, but radiant. The band slowed. The candles flickered out one by one. In that moment, no one could tell where her voice ended and the echo began. When the final note fell, the air itself seemed to stop. And through that silence came one faint, impossible sound. A low hum, like the beginning of an old Elvis recording. The garden had never been that quiet. You could feel the stillness, the weight of disbelief, settle over thousands of people like fog. Lisa stood motionless, staring at the microphone as if it had just spoken back. The feedback hum faded. The only sound was the rustle of jackets and the soft murmur of wind moving through bare trees. Then she took a deep breath. "This song," she said into the mic, "was something my father started 40 years ago." People leaned closer. Cameras zoomed in. A journalist from Memphis Gazette whispered, "She's confirming it," Lisa continued, her voice trembling. "I found the lyrics last year, written in his handwriting. Just a few lines, a melody on an old tape. He never finished it." She looked down, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I did." The audience erupted into gasps. Someone shouted, "Sing it again!" Jerry Schilling froze behind the curtain. He had been there when Elvis wrote hundreds of songs. But this was one he'd never heard about. The pianist looked over at Lisa, waiting for a cue. She nodded. The first chord came soft, reverent, like a prayer whispered into cold air. Lisa began to sing again. When your light starts to fade and your voice disappears, I'll still be listening. I'll still be near. The crowd swayed slowly, candlelight reflecting in tears. Some closed their eyes, others pressed their palms together, as if the music itself were sacred. And then, halfway through the verse, the microphone hissed again. The sound technician flinched, twisting the dials. "That's not feedback," he muttered. "It's tonal." Jerry walked closer. "What do you mean tonal?" "There's a low harmony on the track," the tech whispered. "It's coming through a dead channel. I swear, it's there." Lisa heard it too. She paused mid-line, eyes darting toward the soundboard. Then she smiled faintly. "Guess he wanted to help me finish it." Gasps, murmurs, goosebumps. She turned back to the microphone, her voice softer now, barely more than a whisper. "I'll follow your footsteps wherever they lead, 'cause the song doesn't end. It just changes key." The moment those words left her mouth, a deep baritone harmony joined for 2 beats. Faint, warm, and impossibly precise. It wasn't playback. It wasn't echo. It was live. People screamed. Others clasped their mouths. One woman fell to her knees sobbing, clutching a candle that flickered out as if snuffed by wind. Lisa kept singing, undeterred. Tears streaked down her cheeks, but she never broke. When the final line came, her voice cracked. "And I'll meet you again where the rivers run free." The harmony returned. Just one note this time, rich and unmistakable. Elvis's tone. Then silence. A long, trembling silence that seemed to last forever. Lisa lowered the microphone. The air felt charged, like static before lightning. She turned toward Jerry, who stood frozen in disbelief. "You heard that, didn't you?" He couldn't speak. He just nodded, slowly. The crowd stayed silent, unsure whether to cheer, cry, or pray. Finally, Lisa broke the tension with a quiet laugh through tears. "Well," she said, "I guess he's still the king." That one line shattered the tension. The audience erupted into applause, thunderous, endless, cathartic. But behind the noise, something stranger was happening. In the sound tent, the technician's console lights flickered. Channel 2, the one that should have been empty, blinked rhythmically, perfectly timed to the applause, as if responding to it. The tech whispered, "He's still here." When Lisa finally stepped off the stage, she left the microphone standing upright, untouched, the silver grill glinting beneath the stage lights. From a distance, it almost looked alive, as if it were breathing. Would you have believed it if you'd been there? If a voice from the past sang through your present, would you call it faith or just feedback? As the crowd began to disperse, Jerry noticed something unusual on the edge of the mic stand. A faint inscription carved into the metal. 4 words, words no one had ever seen before. "Until we sing again." The crowd didn't move. Some stood frozen, hands over their mouths. Others looked at one another as if needing confirmation they'd all heard the same impossible sound. The silver microphone still stood center stage, catching the cold sunlight, its steel mesh trembling faintly from the last note. Lisa Marie stayed there, eyes fixed on it. The hum had vanished, but something about the air felt alive, like the silence itself was breathing. Behind her, Jerry Schilling slowly stepped forward. "Lisa," he whispered, "that's enough for today. Let's close it." But she shook her head. "It's not done," he frowned. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not proving," she said. "I'm listening." The sound technician, still pale, adjusted the dials nervously. "Ma'am, that channel is still active. There's a signal feeding in, but the mic's input is clean." "It's impossible." Lisa stepped closer to the mic, her fingers brushing the metal. "Then let's see if it remembers," the crowd murmured. A camera zoomed in. You could see the reflection of the audience's candles flickering in the chrome. She took a shaky breath. "If you're still here, Daddy, sing it with me." Gasps rippled through the garden. Riley covered her mouth. "Mom," she whispered, trembling. Lisa began to hum the same melody, low, fragile. The mic caught her voice perfectly. Then faintly, the harmony returned. It wasn't just sound, it was tone. Warm, deep, unmistakable. The same resonance that once filled the Vegas Hilton, the same cadence that could silence an arena, and now, somehow it was back, in the winter air of Graceland. People screamed. Some fell to their knees. One man near the back dropped his camera, hands shaking. Lisa didn't stop. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled through them. "You kept your promise," she whispered. She sang the chorus again, stronger this time. "When your light starts to fade, I'll still be near." The crowd joined in instinctively, thousands of voices rising together, blending into a single human echo. The microphones, the trees, even the wind seemed to carry the sound upward. It wasn't a concert anymore. It was communion. Jerry wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. "I've seen a lot of shows," he muttered, "but never anything like this." Lisa lifted the mic one last time, voice trembling but powerful now. "You once said music never dies. Guess you were right." Then she let go. The mic slipped from her hand, swinging slightly on its stand before settling. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. Then, through the speakers, came one faint, final sound, a low breath, almost like a sigh, then a whisper, barely audible, but caught on every live feed, every camera, every ear in that garden. "I'm proud of you, baby." The words hung in the air. People gasped. A woman fainted. Others sobbed openly. Lisa staggered back, hands over her mouth. Jerry caught her before she fell. "Lisa," he whispered, voice breaking. "You heard that, right?" She nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I did." The sound tech stared at his console, hands trembling. That voice wasn't hers. The waveform's completely different. Riley looked at her mother, speechless. Lisa took one final look at the microphone. "He found his way back," she whispered. The applause that followed wasn't wild or chaotic. It was reverent, quiet at first, then growing into a wave that rolled through Graceland like wind through trees. Would you have believed it if you'd been there? Or would you still try to explain it away? A glitch, a trick of sound, a story too beautiful to be true. But sometimes, truth doesn't need permission to exist. It just sings. Lisa turned to leave, but stopped halfway across the stage. She looked back at the microphone one last time, and as she did, one of the overhead spotlights flickered, then glowed steady again, like a pulse. 2 days after the performance, Graceland's sound team met inside the small recording booth behind the museum wing. The room smelled of coffee, dust, and warm electronics. On the desk sat a single hard drive labelled in Sharpie. Lisa, Jan 8, 2017. It was supposed to contain nothing unusual. A clean vocal track, ambient crowd noise, maybe a little static from the winter wind. But when Ray Thompson, the head audio engineer, pressed play, his face went pale. There it was. That voice. Low, smooth, distant. He played the section again, isolating the final 30 seconds. You could hear Lisa's trembling whisper. Then faintly, another timbre. Baritone. Aged, but unmistakably human. "I'm proud of you, baby." Ray stopped the tape, staring at the screen. His palms were sweating. The spectral display showed 2 distinct frequencies, one female, one male, perfectly aligned in harmony. He turned to his assistant. "There's no way. The backup mic wasn't even on." The assistant checked the file tree. "We only had one input live. Channel 2 is empty." Ray zoomed in on the waveform. "Then tell me why there's a second track." Back in Los Angeles, Lisa sat quietly in her home office when the call came. Ray's voice was trembling through the phone. "You need to hear this yourself." He emailed her the file. She opened it on her laptop, hands shaking. The moment she pressed play, the sound of the crowd filled her speakers. Then her own voice, clear and raw. And there it was, again, that whisper, that impossible warmth. She covered her mouth, tears rising instantly. "Daddy?" For nearly a minute she said nothing. Then she exhaled slowly. "Don't touch it," she said softly. "Don't fix it. Don't filter it. Just let it be." Word spread fast through the Presley circle. Jerry Schilling called her that evening. "You know this'll blow up," he warned. "I'm not releasing it," she said. It wasn't for the world. It was for him. But by the next morning, someone leaked a snippet online, a 14-second clip titled "The Mic That Spoke Back." Within hours, it had over 1 million views. Fans flooded forums claiming they heard Elvis's tone in the harmony. Audio specialists uploaded spectral analyses. One headline read, "Ghost frequency detected in Lisa Marie performance." Others dismissed it as interference, a fluke of overlapping signals, a trick of emotion. But the believers didn't care. They said they felt it. Lisa tried to stay quiet, but the weight of it followed her. Reporters camped at the gates. Radios replayed the performance. Even churches quoted her words about music never dying. Riley begged her to address it publicly. "Mom, just tell them what you think," Lisa smiled sadly. "If they need proof, they already missed the point." That night, she drove back to Graceland. Alone. No press, no guards. The winter wind howled through the garden where it had all happened. She stepped onto the empty stage. The microphone still stood there, polished and perfect. She touched it gently, whispering, "You did good." Then she noticed something resting on the ground beside the mic stand. A small cassette tape in a cracked plastic case. No label, just a smudge of silver marker. She turned it over and froze. The initials EP were carved faintly into the corner. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "It can't be." She slid it into the old deck connected to the monitor speaker. For a long moment, nothing but hiss. Then, faint piano keys, a baritone hum. It was the same melody, Light in the Valley, half finished, rough, but undeniably him. She covered her face, sobbing softly. He had written it, and somehow, 40 years later, she had finished it. When she left the stage that night, she carried the tape in her coat pocket. She didn't speak to anyone about what she heard again, but she started to smile more, because she finally understood what he'd meant when he said, "Music never dies. It just waits to be finished." April 2023, Graceland Museum. Memphis visitors moved quietly through the main hall, their footsteps echoing off marble floors. Glass cases glimmered under soft lights. Guitars, scarves, gold records, each one humming with history. But the newest display drew every eye. At the center, resting beneath crystal glass, sat the Shure 55 microphone, its silver still polished, its base draped with a faded silk scarf. Beneath it, a brass plaque read, "Lisa's Farewell Performance, Jan 8, 2017. Light in the Valley." Every day, hundreds stopped to stare. Some pressed their palms to the glass. Others whispered, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. Behind the case, a screen played footage from that morning. The crowd, the candles, Lisa's trembling voice, and that faint, impossible harmony that had divided the world. A little girl tugged on her mother's coat. "Mommy, is that her daddy singing?" Her mother smiled softly. "Some people say it was." The child tilted her head. "Do you?" She paused, then whispered, "I think love can sound like anything." Outside, the April air carried the faint hum of tourists lining the gates, leaving flowers and handwritten notes. Some simply said, "Thank you." Others wrote, "We heard him." Inside the archives, Ray Thompson stood by his workstation, the original audio tape spinning slowly on a reel. He'd been asked to remaster it one last time for a digital preservation. As the tape hissed, that familiar voice filled the room again. Lisa's line, followed by the faint baritone echo. "I'm proud of you, baby." Ray sat back, shaking his head. "Every time I hear it," he murmured, "it still gives me chills." From the museum balcony, Riley Keough watched silently. Her mother's passing just months before had left an ache too deep for words. But standing there, she felt peace. She reached into her purse and unfolded a small handwritten note Lisa had left for her. The paper was yellowed, creased, but the words still clear. When your voice shakes, keep singing. That's when truth shows up. Riley smiled through tears. She turned to the curator. Keep the mic here. Don't ever move it, he nodded. It'll stay. Some things aren't exhibits. They're echoes. That night, after the museum closed, a security guard making his final round stopped by the display. He swore later that he heard a faint vibration, the kind you feel more than hear. He leaned closer to the glass. The mic stood perfectly still, but for a second he could have sworn it hummed, low, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. He stepped back, smiling to himself. Guess the king's still rehearsing. When the remastered version of Light in the Valley released online that same week, it reached millions within days. But unlike other viral moments, this one didn't come with debates or arguments. People didn't care whether it was real. They just listened. Fans described hearing comfort in the melody, something beyond nostalgia. One comment under the video read, "Maybe heaven doesn't sound like choirs. Maybe it sounds like this and a daughter finishing her father's last song, and maybe that was the truth. Because sometimes the proof of love isn't what we can explain. It's what refuses to fade." Lisa's voice, trembling yet brave, had done what even fame couldn't. It turned grief into harmony. And long after the applause faded, that moment stayed. Not as sound, but as faith. Would you have believed it if you'd been there? Or would you need to hear the whisper yourself? Decades later, when the lights of the museum dim each night, staff say one faint reflection always lingers on the glass. The shape of a hand resting gently over the microphone. No one's sure how it gets there, but they never wipe it away, because some stories are better left as miracles. If this story touched you, share it with someone who still believes love ends when the song stops. Because Lisa and Elvis proved it doesn't. Music and memory outlive us all. Maybe that's the secret of legends. When their voices fade, it's not silence that remains. It's the echo that refuses to die.